Long before the first breath is drawn, before the cry that announces a soul's return to the earthly plane, there exists a moment shrouded in the veils of the unseen, where destinies are woven in silence. Ancient traditions whisper of it, mystics across millennia have glimpsed its truth. In the early 20th century, one man, the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce, pulled back the curtain on a revelation so profound that it challenges the very foundation of human existence. The soul does not arrive blindly into this world. It chooses, or so it is believed. Yet Cayce's readings, delivered in a trance so deep it bordered on the divine, carried a darker, more complex truth, one that unsettles the comforting notion of free will in the spiritual realm. For while many souls do select their parents, their cultures, and even the trials they will endure, others are not granted such agency. They are placed, assigned, bound to lineages and bloodlines by forces beyond their comprehension, as if caught in a current too powerful to resist. The question lingers, heavy with implication, why? The concept of pre-birth selection is not new. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of the bardo, that liminal space between lives where the soul, guided by karma, surveys potential rebirths. The Kabbalists describe the Gilgal, the wheel of souls, where past deeds dictate future circumstances. Even Plato, in his myth of painted a vision of souls in the meadow of choice, selecting their next existence with solemn deliberation. But Cayce's visions introduced a disturbing exception to this ancient rule. Not all souls stand in that meadow as equals. Some are directed by higher forces, by karmic debts so profound they cannot be refused, or by lessons so critical they brook no negotiation. What then does this mean for the soul that finds itself in a family it did not choose? Is it punishment, a test, or something far more intricate? A divine correction, a balancing of scales from lives long forgotten. Cayce's readings suggest that such placements are never arbitrary. They are the universe's way of forcing growth, where stagnation once reigned. A soul resistant to evolution may be bound to those who will, through love or conflict, compel its awakening. Consider, for a moment, your own lineage. The faces in old photographs, the voices that shaped your earliest memories, were they chosen, or were they chosen for you? And if the latter, what lesson lies hidden in the threads of that connection? The answer may not be comfortable, but then spiritual truth rarely is. It demands that we look deeper, question further, and above all, remember the hidden laws of forced placement. When the soul's will bends to cosmic design, Edgar Cayce's readings reveal a startling truth, one that unsettles the very notion of free will in the spiritual realm. While many souls are said to select their earthly families with deliberate intention, his visions spoke of another, far more enigmatic process, the assignment of souls into lineages they did not choose. These placements, he claimed, were not arbitrary but governed by unseen laws, karmic debts so profound they supersede personal desire, or cosmic contracts forged in realms beyond mortal comprehension. The question lingers, heavy with implication. What forces could compel a soul to inhabit a body, a bloodline, a destiny it never wanted? Historical and esoteric traditions offer fragmented echoes of this concept. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of souls drawn into rebirth by the weight of unresolved attachments, their choices constrained by the pull of past actions. In the Kabbalistic teachings of Gilgal, the cycle of souls, certain Neshamot souls are said to be thrown into bodies by divine decree, their paths predetermined to rectify ancient wrongs or fulfill a collective fate. Even the Greek philosopher Empedocles, in his fragments on reincarnation, hinted at souls bound to specific lives as punishment or purification. Yet Cayce's revelations diverge in their precision. He described souls placed into families not merely as penance but as catalysts, for the individual, the bloodline, even the world. A soul resistant to its assigned role might struggle against its family's energy, its conflicts, its inherited wounds, only to later realize these very struggles were the crucible for its evolution. Consider the implications. If a soul is forced into a lineage marked by suffering, abuse, neglect, or generational curses, does this not raise the specter of cosmic injustice? Or is there a higher logic at play, one where the soul's resistance itself becomes the lesson? Cayce's readings suggest that such placements often serve to break cycles, that the soul, though initially unwilling, is uniquely equipped to transmute the family's karma. The pain of the unchosen path, then, may be the price of a greater alchemy. One must ask, have you ever felt like a stranger in your own family? That nagging sense of dissonance, as if the blood in your veins carries a story not your own. Could it be the whisper of a soul remembering a choice it never made? And if so, what is the lesson hidden in the struggle? The answer may lie not in rebellion, but in the slow, deliberate work of reclaiming agency, even within a destiny you did not select. For perhaps the greatest test of the spirit is not the path we choose, but the wisdom we carve from the one chosen for us. The hidden alchemy of unchosen lineage. And so we arrive at the most enigmatic of spiritual paradoxes. What happens when the soul is placed not where it longs to be, but where the cosmos demands it must? Edgar Cayce's readings whisper of a truth far older than our earthly understanding, that some lives are not chosen but assigned, a divine decree wrapped in the guise of hardship. Yet within this apparent injustice lies the most profound of alchemical transformations. For it is not the family we select that shapes us most deeply, but the one we are given against will, against instinct, that forges the steel of our spirit. Consider the life of Helen Keller, whose soul, Cayce suggested, may have been bound to her earthly parents, not by choice but by karmic necessity. Born blind and deaf, her early years were a prison of silence, yet it was this very confinement that forced her to shatter the boundaries of human perception. Her teacher, Anne Sullivan, was no accident of fate. Cayce's readings hint at a soul contract older than their lifetimes, a debt of wisdom to be repaid through struggle. Keller's later words, "Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet," echo the cosmic law Cayce described, that resistance is the whetstone for the soul's edge. Had she been born to indulgent parents or a body without limitation, would the world have ever witnessed her unyielding light? Or turn to the lesser-known tale of the 14th Dalai Lama, who as a child was plucked from his peasant family and declared the reincarnation of his predecessor. Tibetan lore speaks of souls drawn to their next vessel, yet Cayce's readings suggest that some laminas, some spiritual blueprints are imposed, not elected. The young Tenzin Gyatso did not ask for the weight of a nation upon his shoulders, but it was this unchosen burden that stripped him of ego, that taught him the fragility of attachment, and that forged his unshakable compassion. "My religion is very simple," he would later say. "My religion is kindness, a simplicity born not from ease but from the crucible of a path he did not select." Cayce quote. Teachings reveal that such placements are never arbitrary. They are the universe's way of balancing ledgers written in lifetimes past, karma not as punishment but as curriculum. A soul resistant to humility may be placed among the proud, one that has avoided service may be bound to a family of need. The suffering that follows is not a flaw in the design, but the lesson itself. The German mystic Meister Eckhart spoke of the ground of the soul, a place where divine will and human resistance collide. It is in this collision that enlightenment is sparked. And so one must ask, what if the family that wounded you was also the family that saved you? What if the parent who failed to love you was the very mirror held up to your soul's forgotten shadows? Cayce's readings insist that these are not accidents, but appointments, sacred, if painful, rendezvous with destiny. The question then becomes not why was I placed here, but what was I meant to learn? Let this thought linger as the stars do. Perhaps the greatest spiritual mastery is not in choosing our path, but in transcending the one we were given. And if that is so, what might your unchosen lineage be teaching you? And so the tapestry of existence unfolds, not by chance, but by design. For within the grand architecture of the cosmos, there exists an intricate system of agreements, unseen yet binding, the sacred covenants known as soul contracts. Edgar Cayce's readings reveal these as more than mere metaphysical abstractions. They are the invisible threads weaving fate itself. Before a single breath is drawn in the physical realm, souls gather in the halls of pre-birth planning, where divine orchestration dictates the timing, the players and the lessons to be learned. But what happens when the script is written not by choice, but by necessity? When the soul is called to a family, a time, or a trial it did not actively select. The answer lies in the profound interplay of cosmic timing and karmic debt. Cayce's visions described these contracts as sacred vows, some forged in love, others in obligation, where souls agree to meet under specific conditions to fulfill a higher purpose. A mother and child may reunite across lifetimes to resolve an ancient betrayal. A sibling's arrival might be timed to act as a mirror, reflecting back the shadows one must confront. Even the most painful unions, a child born into neglect, a soul placed among strangers, are not without meaning. The adversity itself is the catalyst, the crucible in which the spirit is refined. Consider the mystic who once walked as a persecuted heretic, only to return as the very hand that would heal his former tormentors, or the warrior soul, bound by oath to a lineage of conflict, until the final incarnation breaks the cycle through forgiveness. Yet the most haunting question lingers: what if you too are living a contract you do not remember? Look upon the faces of those who have shaped you, those who challenged you, those who loved you fiercely, those who left too soon. What lessons emerged from their presence? Was the cruelty of a parent the fire needed to forge your resilience? Did the loss of a loved one crack open a door to compassion you never knew you held? Cayce's readings suggest that even the most painful bonds are not accidents, but appointments, divinely timed encounters, where the soul's growth is prioritized over its comfort. And so the invitation rests before you now. Close your eyes and journey inward. What might you have agreed to before this life began? The answers are not hidden in the stars, but in the echoes of your own experiences, the unshakable pull towards certain people, the inexplicable trials that shaped your path. For if the universe is indeed a school, then every relationship is a classroom, and every hardship a lesson waiting to be uncovered. The question is not whether you will remember, but whether you will awaken to the truth written in your soul's own hand. The paradox of predestination. How free will rises within the threads of fate. They say the stars may write our beginnings, but it is the hand of the soul that pens the rest. Edgar Cayce's readings reveal a startling truth. Some souls are placed into families, not by choice, but by cosmic necessity. Yet within this apparent constraint lies an even greater revelation. The power of free will is not erased by predestination. It is instead the flame that burns brightest when tested by the winds of fate. Consider the life of Helen Keller, born into a world of silence and darkness, her soul tethered to a body that seemed a prison. Had she chosen such a beginning? Cayce's work suggests that some souls are assigned to circumstances they did not select, yet Keller's story is not one of surrender, it is one of defiance. Through sheer will she shattered the barriers of her physical reality, proving that while the stage may be set, the performance is ours alone. Or take the case of Viktor Frankl, a man thrust into the horrors of a concentration camp, his family torn from him by forces beyond his control. Yet in that abyss, he discovered the ultimate freedom, the ability to choose his response. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, he wrote. The last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Herein lies the paradox. The soul may not always select its earthly vessel or the hands that first cradle it, but within every constraint there exists a space, however narrow, for agency. The Akashic records, as Cayce described them, are not merely a ledger of predetermined events. They are a living tapestry woven with threads of both destiny and decision. A soul placed in a family of conflict may find itself bound by karmic ties, yet it is the choices made within that crucible, the moments of forgiveness, the acts of rebellion, the quiet revolutions of the heart, that redefine its path. So one must ask, where in your own life have the lines between fate and free will blurred? Have there been moments when the weight of circumstance felt insurmountable, only for you to realize in hindsight that your response was the true architect of your destiny? The universe may script the prologue, but the soul, your soul, holds the pen for every chapter that follows. Let this be the invitation to stand at the crossroads of what was given and what you will claim. For if the readings of Cayce teach us anything, it is that even within the grand design, the smallest act of will can echo through eternity. The silent burden of the unchosen. When the soul struggles to belong, there exists a quiet sorrow, one rarely spoken yet deeply felt, a weight carried by those who arrive in this world, not as willing participants but as souls placed without choice. Edgar Cayce's readings reveal a truth both haunting and profound. Some are bound to families not by selection, but by necessity, by karmic debts unpaid, or by lessons so urgent they brook no refusal. And in that unchosen bond, a fracture forms. A sense of alienation takes root, whispering through the years like a ghost in the halls of memory. This is not where I belong. The emotional toll is not merely a fleeting disquiet, it is a persistent ache, a dissonance between the soul's essence and the environment it inhabits. The child who feels like a stranger in their own home, the adult who scans the faces of loved ones and finds no reflection of their inner truth. These are the silent markers of such a placement. There is a loneliness here that transcends circumstance, for it is not the absence of company, but the absence of resonance. The soul, unmoored, searches for echoes of itself in a world that does not answer in kind. Psychologically, the struggle manifests in restless questioning. Why does love feel conditional? Why does every embrace carry the faintest trace of obligation? The unchosen soul may spend a lifetime chasing validation, mistaking external approval for the belonging they crave. Or they may rebel, rejecting the very ties that bind them, only to find that escape does not heal the wound of displacement. Cayce's archives speak of souls who, in past lives, resisted their assigned paths, some breaking free through sheer force of will, others succumbing to bitterness, their spirits hardened by the perceived injustice of their placement. Yet within this struggle lies an unspoken invitation. For those who recognize this ache in themselves or others, there is an opportunity to forge empathy from understanding. Consider the colleague who seems perpetually adrift, the friend who flinches at the word home, the stranger whose eyes hold a depth of longing. Might they too be navigating the silent burden of the unchosen? And if so, how might we meet them not with pity, but with presence, offering not solutions, but the sacred space to be seen? Reflect now on your own journey. Have there been moments when the world felt like a costume poorly fitted, when the roles you were given chafed against the truth of who you are? What if those moments were not failures of belonging, but signposts, guiding you toward the deeper work of reclaiming your soul's path? The pain of displacement need not be the end of the story. It can be the threshold, and on the other side, the possibility of choosing, at last, where to place your love. The alchemy of forgiveness. How releasing the past rewrites the soul's destiny. Long before the concept of reincarnation entered Western thought, the ancient mystics of Egypt whispered of a truth buried within the Akashic records, a truth Edgar Cayce would later illuminate with startling clarity. Forgiveness, he revealed, is not merely an act of moral virtue, but a spiritual alchemy, one that dissolves the chains of unresolved karma and reconfigures the soul's trajectory between lifetimes. And nowhere is this transformation more profound than within the crucible of family, the very bonds that, when fractured, can anchor a soul to cycles of repetition, unless the heart learns to release. Cayce's readings spoke of souls who, in their haste to evolve, were placed into families not by choice but by necessity, a divine intervention to confront unresolved wounds from past lives. Consider the case of a woman in 1930s Virginia, whose readings revealed she had been bound to her abusive father in 3 consecutive incarnations, each life a mirror of the last, until she finally broke the cycle, not through escape, but through forgiveness. The debt is paid not in suffering, Cayce explained, but in the surrender of the grudge. Her act of release did not excuse the harm done. It severed the energetic tether that had kept her soul returning to the same lesson, the same pain. History, it seems, is not just written by the victors, it is rewritten by those who dare to forgive. Yet forgiveness, as Cayce emphasized, is rarely a single moment of epiphany. It is a process, one that begins with the radical acceptance that some wounds were never ours to carry. The soul does not incarnate to endure suffering indefinitely, it returns to transcend it, and transcendence, he insisted, requires a willingness to see the divine spark even in those who have hurt us most. A challenge that becomes possible only when we recognize that every soul, no matter how flawed, is a fragment of the same cosmic whole. So who is it that lingers in the shadows of your memory, their name still a barb in your heart? A parent who failed you, a sibling who betrayed you, or perhaps, most painfully, yourself for the choices that led you here. Cayce's readings suggest that the soul's next journey is shaped not by the wounds we endure, but by the weight we refuse to lay down. To forgive is to declare that the past no longer owns you. It is to step onto the threshold of a new incarnation, one where the lessons are no longer about survival, but about creation. Pause now, and let the question settle. What would it mean to release this? Not for them, for you. The soul does not ask for permission to heal, only for the courage to begin, and in that first trembling step toward forgiveness, the universe conspires to meet you, rewriting destiny, one surrendered grudge at a time. The alchemy of acceptance. How soul-centric awareness transforms the burden of bloodlines. There exists a threshold beyond forgiveness, a realm where the soul no longer questions the fairness of its placement, but begins to perceive the intricate design behind it. Edgar Cayce's readings suggest that the distinction between chosen and imposed family dynamics is not merely a matter of cosmic bureaucracy, but a deliberate contrast meant to awaken the soul to its own resilience. When one recognizes that even the most rigid of familial bonds may serve a purpose unseen by the earthly mind, the weight of resentment dissolves into something far more potent, enlightenment through acceptance. This is not passive surrender, but the dawning realization that every thread of one's lineage, whether woven by choice or circumstance, carries a lesson the soul agreed to confront, if only to transcend it. Consider the ancient mystics who spoke of the soul's journey as a tapestry, where each life is a single stitch in a grander pattern. If a soul is placed into a family against its initial inclination, Cayce's work implies it is not punishment, but preparation, a crucible designed to forge strengths the soul could not cultivate in gentler conditions. The child born into strife may later become the healer, who recognizes suffering's contours with unmatched depth. The spirit bound to rigid traditions may one day shatter those very chains, not out of rebellion, but from an inner knowing that their soul's contract was never to remain confined. Here the paradox emerges. What feels like imprisonment to the ego is often the soul's chosen classroom. Yet how does one move from intellectual understanding to lived transformation? The shift begins when the seeker asks not, "Why was I given this family?" but what within me was meant to rise because of them. This reframing is the alchemy Cayce hinted at, a transmutation of perceived limitation into spiritual currency. The soul who resists their origins remains tethered to the past, but the soul who inquires into the deeper purpose of their bloodline unlocks a freedom no earthly circumstance can confine. It is the difference between dragging one's history like a ball and chain, and wearing it as a crown of hard-won wisdom. The invitation, then, is to stand at the crossroads of perception. Will you see your family as a cage, or as the very crucible that forces your light to burn brighter? The answer does not demand blind devotion nor bitterness, but a sacred curiosity, one that whispers, "Perhaps my soul knew exactly what it was doing." For in that moment of surrender to a grander design, the seeker steps into the role of co-creator, no longer a victim of fate, but a student of its mysteries. And it is here, in the quiet revolution of the mind, that the soul remembers its true power, not to escape its story, but to transfigure it. The soul's purpose beyond the bonds of blood. There exists a quiet truth, whispered through the annals of Edgar Cayce's readings, a truth that does not seek to comfort, but to awaken. For the soul does not measure its journey by the hands that first cradled it, nor by the voices that first spoke its name. It is not the circumstances of birth that define its purpose, but the alchemy of what it chooses to forge from them. Cayce's visions spoke of souls cast into families not by choice, but by necessity, by karmic debts unpaid, by lessons too long deferred. And yet, within these apparent constraints, he revealed something far more profound, the soul's capacity to transcend them. Consider the story of a woman born into a lineage of silence, where words were hoarded like currency and affection was a shadow seldom seen. Cayce's readings suggested she had not chosen this family, but had been placed there to break a cycle, one that stretched back generations, where love had been buried beneath obligation. For decades, she believed herself a victim of fate, until a moment of reckoning arrived. In the quiet of a library, surrounded by the weight of forgotten histories, she uncovered the journals of an ancestor, a woman who had also raged against the same unseen chains. The realization struck her like lightning. She was not repeating a story, she was rewriting it. The family she had not chosen became the very crucible in which her soul's resilience was tempered. By the time she left this life, she had not only healed her own wounds, but had altered the trajectory of those who would follow. This is the paradox Cayce illuminated. The path we did not choose may be the one that shapes us most profoundly. The soul does not seek ease, it seeks evolution. And evolution, he insisted, is not a matter of circumstance but of perspective. What if the family that felt like a prison was in truth the classroom? What if the struggles that seemed unjust were the very lessons the soul had, in some forgotten chamber of the cosmos, agreed to confront? The danger lies not in the origins of our journey, but in the stories we refuse to examine. Many cling to the narrative of being wronged by fate, as though the universe had made an error in their placement. But Cayce's work challenges this assumption. He spoke of souls who, though initially resistant, later recognized the divine precision of their path, how the friction of their circumstances had polished them into something luminous. The question then is not whether we chose our beginnings, but what we choose to make of them. Let this be the invitation to hold one's story not as a sentence but as a compass, to ask, not why was I given this life, but what am I meant to learn from it? For the soul's purpose is not to be bound by the threads of blood, but to weave from them a tapestry far grander than the eye can see. And perhaps in the quiet moments of reflection, we might begin to sense the truth Cayce so often echoed, that every path, no matter how winding or unwelcome, is a sacred passage. The only error is in believing it leads nowhere. And so the tapestry unfolds, thread by thread, life by life, each soul woven into the grand design with purpose, though not always with consent. Edgar Cayce's revelations do not merely challenge the notion of choice before birth. They invite us to confront a far deeper truth, that the soul's journey is not always one of self-determination, but of divine orchestration. The families we are born into, the struggles we inherit, the bonds we never chose, these are not accidents of fate, but deliberate placements within a cosmic narrative far older than our earthly understanding. Yet within this intricate design lies a paradox. Though the circumstances of our arrival may be predetermined, the meaning we extract from them is entirely our own. Consider the weight of this. Some souls are cast into storms they did not summon, only to discover that their resilience was the very lesson they were meant to teach. Others find themselves in lineages burdened by generational pain, not as victims but as the ones destined to break the cycle. Cayce's readings suggest that even when the soul does not choose its earthly vessel, it is never without agency in how it navigates the waters of its existence. The question then is not whether we were given a choice in our beginnings, but what we choose to do with the life we have been given. Do we resist the currents of our lineage, or do we learn to sail them with intention? The relationships that shape us, those fraught with conflict, those steeped in love, those marked by absence, are not mere coincidences. They are echoes of karmic contracts, spiritual agreements and lessons carried across lifetimes. To see them only through the lens of earthly emotion is to miss their deeper significance. A mother's harshness may be the catalyst for a soul's strength, a father's silence, the space in which another learns to find their voice. The losses we endure, the loves we cling to, the families we never understood, all are threads in a pattern we cannot yet see in full. As this exploration draws to a close, one truth remains. The soul's journey is not a solitary one. We are bound to one another in ways that transcend blood, time, and even memory. The child who feels out of place in their family, the parent who struggles to connect with their own offspring, the individual who senses they were meant for another path. Each is a testament to the complexity of the spiritual tapestry, and yet within that complexity lies an invitation to view every relationship, every struggle, every unanswered question as a sacred fragment of a larger story. Let this be the reflection carried forward, that love is not always chosen, but it can always be cultivated. That loss is not merely an ending, but a transition into another form of connection, and that the families we are born into, whether by choice or by design, are but one chapter in an eternal narrative. The challenge then is to live with the awareness that every interaction, every conflict, every moment of tenderness is an opportunity to honor the soul's deeper purpose. That the mysteries of existence do not demand blind faith. They ask only for an open heart and a willing mind. So let the questions linger, let the uncertainties remain. For it is in the space between knowing and not knowing that the soul finds its truest growth. Perhaps the next step is not to seek all the answers, but to embrace the journey with curiosity, to listen to the whispers of the unseen, and to trust that even the paths we did not choose are leading us exactly where we are meant to be. The tapestry is still being woven, and you, yes you, are both the thread and the weaver.